Welcome to CWS Christian Writing and Speaking, an elevated missions prep incorporated company. I'm your host, Jackie Wilson, and today's guest is an educator, an Ironman athlete, the author of Saving Summer, and founder of Warrior Publishing. Her desire to bring to light the survivor to overcomer, victim to victor stories is what has driven her. Today, we will discuss what led her on her journey to share these stories about her book, Saving Summer, the importance of us as people of light to share our stories, and what's next. Let's welcome to the CWS stage, Miss Suzy Ryan. Welcome, Suzy.
Hello. So happy to be here.
Yes, I'm excited about you being here because listening to your background, just finding out more, you were in the classroom as an educator. And one day you looked at the children and said, man, these kids probably have similar stories to the one that I had. And you decided to go on this journey and write this book, Saving Summer. Can you tell us what happened before you decided to take on this venture of becoming an author and eventually becoming a publisher?
Great question. When my students would come in my classroom, because I had suffered as a child trauma, Jackie, I could feel their trauma. I could feel their pain. I always knew the ones that needed a little extra touch, because I think that is God's gift he gives us. There's a verse that talks about treasures in the darkness. And I think the treasure and the darkness of suffering is you get to comfort those with what you've been comforted from Jesus, right? So those kids, I would try to connect with, reach out to, love a little more. They would start to tell me their stories. What a privilege. What a privilege to have these students come and share. And I know it's because they knew that I would understand, because they could feel it too, that I had suffered. So after 20 plus years of this, well, all through it, actually, I always in my mind thought, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to write a book about overcoming trauma. And then I'm going to be able to hand a book to these kids. And they're going to know that they are victors. They are not victims. And they are going to overcome this adversity and be resilient to then be able to reach their destiny to help people with what they've suffered. I always knew it. It took a long time. It's not as easy as just the thought, but it would be embedded in me. It would be something that, when the Lord puts it in your heart, you just know you're going to do it. You don't really know how, and you're going out on faith, right? You're going out on complete faith because I didn't see a way. I didn't have time. There's no way. So I started just writing 20 minutes a day. 20 minutes a day. Some days that turned into a lot more. And some days I barely stayed awake because I had to keep my day job, right? I had to go back and teach, so I didn't have much time. But I could feel God's spirit on me when I wrote. It was such a connection of doing something that I knew eventually was going to help people.
Yeah, I love it. And oftentimes when we have gone through trauma, we can sense when other people have suffered as well. And like you said, it's not for us to keep to ourselves, but we are to go and comfort them in the same way that we have been comforted, because that is the word of God. I know it took you a long time to write this book, but you did write this book. What will people find inside of this book? Tell us more about it.
People will find a bridge of hope for whatever they've experienced, and they will know that they're not alone. I was very authentic with the book because it's a novelization of my life. It doesn't mean that everything in it is true. And I did get permission from everyone who's in it to write, but I'm not free to say what's true and not about their lives. But the suffering that the character Summer suffers is what I suffered. So when you see how gnarly it is, and I say gnarly because it's not a Christian book, it's a Jesus book, because he is the only way that Summer was saved. He's the only way. He was the only hope. And Christian, non-Christian, believer, unbeliever gets it. You can't see what Summer suffered and know that there is not a God. There is a God. because that is what redeems Summer's life. And I love that. I love that God put it into my spirit to want to share my story. How awesome to be used by God. And the pain then turns into promise and praise. And I'm really on a high that he would count me worthy to use my story to help others.
Yeah, I would like to get a little bit more into your story and kind of compare what they found in the book. Can you tell us a little bit more?
It's interesting because I start the book with one of the most traumatic events of my life. And that was when my mother, who has so many gifts, but she had an alcohol problem and a drug problem. And at 15, and this is true in the book, she has an accident and I'm the only one home. And I think she's dead. There's no one else in the house. And I have said some really mean things to her. And she said some really mean things to me, or I should say the character Summer. And it is talking at first in the book. This is the first scene about authentically when kids are not treated well because of whatever struggles their parents have, how they respond. And I hated her. And I said mean things to her as a 15-year-old girl. And then she has this terrible accident and looks like she's bleeding out in my lap. And I'm thinking, no, I didn't mean it. And you think about the guilt, and even it makes me teary thinking about it, that you carry. That's the first chapter. So it's a wild ride. And then I go back to 4-year-old Summer, 5-year-old Summer, 6-year-old Summer, and foreshadow then what led to the mother bleeding, looking like she's bleeding out on the floor on the daughter's lap. And it is all to foreshadow that Jesus has been in every detail.
We often think that God is not there, but he is always there.
Always.
Always.
There's no way, even looking back and writing it, that I didn't see that there is free choice. We know that. That's the greatest gift God can give us, is free choice. Even with the free choice, he was there. He was there to comfort me, to help me, to how did I even go upstairs before she fell? I mean, I got to save her life. I got to save her life. She would have died. And that's just the start of him showing up in my life in every single way possible. And I get to put that on paper and think about it, Jackie, as I wrote it. And I again remembered how faithful he was to me, faithful to rescue me time and time again. And then when I made poor choices, and I don't look so great in the book because, again, Summer's based on my character. And I did show authentically how when parents aren't there to raise their kids, the kids get into trouble. I like to call it, because I'm a teacher, I'm an English teacher, The Lord of the Flies Kids. That's the book where the kids raise themselves and they get into all this trouble on this island. My sister and I were like the Lord of the Flies kids. We got in a lot of trouble, but God was there. God was always there rescuing us.
I love it. And let's talk a little bit about why it's important for us as Christians to share our stories, because that is something that you're really emphasizing. And I know one aspect, of course, is we are to comfort other people as we've gone through and been comforted ourselves. But what other things have you seen that make an impact on other people's lives because of when we share our stories personally?
It's interesting to me that people can say whatever they want about Jesus, which makes me sad for them. People can say, how can you believe that? But people can argue with your story because your story is your story. So when we share our story of redemption, of how Jesus loves us and how he helps us overcome the trauma that's in life, no one can argue with it. And that's what the book does. The book shares what happens when difficulty seems like there's no way out, and he shows up. When he shows up like that, and then he asked me, I felt it in my heart, Suzy, I want to share your story to encourage other people. Jackie, how could I say no? He was there every step of the way, rescuing me. How can I say no? Oh, I don't want to be vulnerable. No, even though I wrote it as a novel, I've gotten some wild kickback, right? You know, and then I had to think, Jackie, well, it's a Jesus book. And what did Jesus get on the earth? He got kickback. So am I surprised? I finally changed my mind. The whole trajectory of how, oh no, they're coming after me. And I thought, well, of course they are. They came after Jesus. So how privileged am I to stand up for Jesus? So I think when he tells you to do something, you do it. You don't hesitate. And that's what I did.
I love it. And ultimately, your goal was to be able to share this book with the students who have gone through trauma. What has been their reaction to your book, students in particular?
Well, I have to be careful because I'm in a public school
Of
and I
course.
love it. I worked at a Christian school and I love that. Kids are kids. It doesn't matter what kind of school it is. And I love the students. I've taught middle school, high school, because the book, and I'm not comparing myself to this author. So, I mean, but it's got the same themes as Maya Angelou's I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, which of course is probably the most phenomenal piece of literature ever written. It's on our approved school list to teach that.
Wow.
So what I've done is I have let students have a choice as a companion novel. They get to choose to do a compare and contrast of, because that's the literary classic we're working on. And then I've given them the opportunity to have my book along with it to compare and contrast present day novel and then classic novel. But I haven't made anybody, and again, because I want them to choose. But the kids that I've put it in their hands, they get it because they know what suffering's like. And I have had the most amazing feedback of the kids getting the story. And even though it's a Jesus book, it's not offensive because when Jesus comes in, he's love. There's no way you can not connect with how he rescued Summer. So it's really making Jesus look good, which is what our goal is as Christians. And what's been my goal is to represent Jesus as well as I can. So the students have loved it.
That's wonderful. What is next for you, Suzy?
Well, I'm not sure I'm writing another book. People have asked me, what's the sequel? And because it's a coming of age novel and it ends when Summer's in college. And I tell God a lot. He's so gracious to let me tell him things. I tell God, well, I'm not thinking that this is what I want to do is to write a sequel. But if he ever told me it's go time, and I'd say, here we go, as long as you're with me. So I don't know if I'll write another novel. Right now, what I'm concentrating on is I'm concentrating on letting people know that if suffered, that they're going to be okay. That if I could get through it, they could get through it. And there's nothing that God can't redeem. And I love the message. I love the message. I also love that I wrote one of my students who died, Jack Monday. He was my student in the 7th grade, and he got into a car right at COVID when he was 16, made a poor choice, and was in a car with a driver who didn't have a license, lots of kids in the middle of the night, and he dies 2 blocks from his house. It's interesting, Jackie, because that is in the book when I make the same mistake. First of all, getting in a car in the middle of the night with a girl, that's Summer's mistake, which was my mistake, and driving one time with a group of girls, almost wrecking. So there's no judgment for me. But his mother, Jack's mother, who's such a beautiful, lovely person, at his candlelight vigil said, keep my Jackie's memory alive. So I wrote him in the book in a scene, and he steals it because he stole every scene. Winsome, gregarious, handsome, loving people. So what I have loved doing in the book is telling people, women, parents that have lost their kids, that God has those kids, that God has those kids. And there's so many people hurting with COVID because so many kids made poor choices. It's an epidemic of loss of teens. I have been able to be a voice for Jesus. Oh, it makes me so thankful to tell those hurting moms that God has their kids. So that's been the focus. That's been the next step for me. Right before I got on the podcast, there's a text thread I'm on about moms that have lost their kids. And I was able to comfort them with a Bible verse, the one, God is close to the brokenhearted and saves those crushed in spirit. And that's been a gift for me.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Tell people how they can connect with you.
Well, I have a great website, SuzyRyan.com, SuzyRyan. And I say that because my daughter's running it. And daughters make their moms, they tell them the truth. Mom, that's not working. We're not going to do that. Mom, the thing you're wearing is not working. It's too bright. It's got too much. So she's running my website, and I'm very busy because I'm teaching full time. So I will get back to you, but it might take me a little bit longer, but they can connect with me. And she has put together some of the most creative and fun and clever reels, and also reels that you'll sob. You'll sob because she has one with Jack and another mother who lost her son, and then someone who I lost in the book. I don't want to give that away. She's put together my website of meaningful, touching moments that show that God is real and he will be there in your life.
Love it. Love it. As we wrap up your interview, Suzy, what is the one thing that you want to leave with the people? The one thing where they can take action today?
I suffered a lot, and I know everyone has suffered in their own way a lot, but my action steps are twofold. Forgive fast. I forgive everyone who hurt me. It was not personal. My goal is to be unoffendable. Nobody hurts you personally. They have their own struggles. Hurt people hurt other people. We know that, but free people free other people. And we become free when we forgive. I'm not saying it's easy. I know it's not. It's a choice. And by forgiving everyone that has hurt me, I am free. The next step is love fiercely. Who needs to be loved in your sphere of influence? One person loving on a hurt kid makes all the difference. A hurt adult. That is what we need to be doing, is loving those people and being the one place of safety and love for hurting people.
CWS audience, you have heard her, and she has given you action steps that you can implement in your life. Forgive fast and love fiercely. We want to be free people. And part of being free is by starting to tell people your story. Use your story to comfort other people. Use your story to tell other people that they can make it, because obviously you are making it too. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. And until next time, beautiful people, God bless.